Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hopefully my sound is working today and everything is a-okay. Give me just a second here to get our Facebook connected as well. All right. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. I am Dr. Minette Riordan. I am in my PJs. Hi, Leslie. Good morning, my dear friend. And Tuesdays and Thursdays in the month of February. Good morning, Kim. And Barbara, welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome. Tuesdays and Thursdays throughout the month of February, I am being inspired by the prompts and affirmations from our self-love extravaganza, this pretty little PDF that my son and I created for you. And as I was going through it today and looking at how do I want to approach the page, I knew I wanted to get back into my big art journal today, create a little bit longer of a page. There's so many amazing prompts in here. I'm like, I want to do that one and I want to do that one and I want to do that one. So I need to make some time to sit with this even when I'm not on here with you live on YouTube, because there's some really great prompts like reflect on self-compassion through a monochromatic art journal page. Good morning, Mary, Judy, Bonnie. Excuse me. But what felt good this morning was to look at some of the affirmations that I hadn't looked at and give an example of how I would use an affirmation in an art journal page. So a couple of weeks ago, I made these sweet little affirmation cards. I still want to add to this deck, and this is a monochromatic expression, right? It's all reds with a little bit of black and white, maybe some little pops of other colors. So if you missed this video on the affirmation cards, that was a fun one. And Tori made the most beautiful deck that she shared on her Instagram. So if you're part of my community and you know Tori, I would definitely check it out. If you haven't purchased the prompts yet, you can do that for $5. It really helps support our channel. And the link to do that is in the description of this video. But I really loved the affirmation about perfectionism, it's right here on top. The one that said, I release the need for perfection and embrace my perfectly imperfect self. I sent an email in error to someone, two people that had the same name and the same last initial. And it didn't make any sense to the person who received it, and it was a little bit of a difficult email to send in the first place, and I was mortified that I had sent the email to the wrong person, and she sent me the kindest, most gracious reply. And I'm imperfect, right? I'm going too fast. I need to slow down. But it made me think of that, just being a little more self-compassionate towards myself. I'm not perfect. I do make mistakes. And in my art, I don't struggle for perfectionism, but in other areas of my life, I do. I still feel that need. And the need for perfectionism often comes from wanting to control everything. It also comes from fear of being judged or hurt by others, so we don't put things out because of that fear. I saw this a lot, especially when I was doing my business coaching, that people would just never get things going. They kept waiting until they got it right. And if you wait till you get it perfect, or whatever your definition of right is, what happens is you just actually never even get it going. So this morning I wanted to create a mixed media page reflecting a little bit on being compassionate with myself when I do make a mistake and releasing some of that need for perfection and control, and to actually embrace my imperfections. And again, asking for support, right? It's not even about asking for forgiveness. It's just saying, it's taking responsibility. I made a mistake and I'm human. So I don't know if anyone else belongs to Costco. I often find great images for collage in their magazines, and I love the words cultivating resilience. Well, every time I allow myself to be imperfect, I am cultivating resilience. I'm going to save those words for something else but this flower growing up through the cracks is such a great image of how beauty rises out of imperfection, how beauty rises out of imperfection. So I loved this image and want to be able to add that into my collage. And I also really liked this image of this woman, right? You know, moving forward means for me moving past imperfection. And I may actually cut her out and use her as a mask today is kind of what I'm thinking, or a stencil. So we'll see where we get to. So I'm not quite sure where I'm going, but I know that I'm really loving these couple of images. Those are some more of the affirmations. And then I want to cut out that affirmation about perfection from the list of prompts and stick it on my page. And I realize I only have a few pages left in this journal, and it's always so satisfying to fill up a journal. So I started this one in November as a gratitude journal, and it's like chunky and juicy. And I'm just wondering if anyone else really loves those moments of watching journals get filled up. Like there's a satisfaction in here, and there's also a lot of beauty, and there's a lot of imperfection. There is a lot of play and practice. Like this is the place that I come to just experiment and try things. I loved this little kitty looking into the garden. That was from one of our November or December prompts. This was actually a beautiful page from Tiara Smith's gratitude journal class. But I'm just kind of flipping through quickly and looking at all the different ways that I experiment and play, and that no two things are really alike, and yet they make me so happy. And there's something, you know, inspiring about looking back at our own work and seeing the imperfection and then the pieces that I'm like, oh, I really love that. You know, just noticing my reaction to my own work. And I don't often take time to go back through my journals, but they're a bit of a snapshot. I still have a whole envelope full of images that haven't made it into my journal, but feel like they definitely want to be in here. So this one was a little bit of a vision board for this year. I need to get a picture of Brad and I for this. So there's things that aren't finished. It is a perfectly imperfect journal, right? So many of the ways that we have played here together, lessons from classes. And I've also really appreciated just working in one journal. I often have so many journals on the go, and it can get a bit overwhelming or confusing and what goes in where. So I'm really kind of loving having just this one journal to work in. And I show you this just to remind you to take a moment and look at your journals through the lens of self-compassion and imperfection, just to see where has your own journey brought you to recently. All right, let me get my keyboard out of the way here just so that I don't, that might be fun to play with this morning. And I made all these little arrow stencils out of scrappy bits, so maybe some arrows might be fun this morning. And again, it's a day of just kind of using what's lying around on my desk, maybe some little bits of collage of some of these old wonky bits. So my son came over, but I'm going to just get some paint down on the page first. I'm still sticking with that same more or less monochromatic palette of, you know, pinks and reds with a little bit of black and white. So let me pull those out. Let's try this cad red and maybe a light pink. And I'm going to limit the number of colors here today because I don't, you go away. So this silly computer, if I just move anything the wrong way, it starts opening windows. Limit my palette. Sometimes that just makes it simpler. There's less choices. It allows me to go a little bit faster. And I think definitely maybe some pops of neon pink I'm wanting maybe I like is that my oh yeah, the alizarin. I think maybe that alizarin crimson, which is a little pinker. So I'm feeling kind of pinky today, so we're going to see we can do with these. And I've got my black and my white. And I think where I want to start today is I want to get some words down on the page. So my son Connor came over yesterday and he is such a blessing. He and my daughter both love organizing and sorting and cleaning and going through things. And so he came over and we went through all of my pens, pencils, colored pencils, markers, like all the writing implements. But now I have nothing in front of me, I realize, except a couple of poscas. So I might have to go grab some other things. And we also went through all of my boxes of already prepared collage materials and sorted all of those thematically. So I feel so much better. I don't feel like I'm quite drowning in paper as much as I was. But I often like to start a blank page by just getting my handwriting onto the page. I usually take some time, especially in my Hanamula here, to do some journaling ahead of time. And I didn't do that this morning because I was working on my lion painting, which felt more fun than journaling this morning. I am very lucky to have him close by, and it's a great way for him to make some extra cash as well. So it's a win-win-win all the way around. So I'm just going to start by putting that affirmation. I want the energy of that affirmation right on this page. As a lefty, I can't write this way. I'd have to turn my journal around to get it going. So I'm just going to write it sideways. I release the need for perfection and embrace my perfectly imperfect self. You're painting a lion painting also based on the Tarot Strength card. Oh my gosh, I love it. Is that the eight, right? Isn't that the eight of the major arcana is strength, if I remember correctly, which is my life number, my life card, right? Just in numerology and in the tarot, I am an eight. So that's so funny that you said that, Bonnie. I love it. I release the need for perfection and embrace my perfectly imperfect self. And I'm going to add, I practice self-compassion as I release my need to control or get things right. So again, this is all going to get painted over. I love that. Maybe we need a little infinity symbol. And again, this is often the way that I love to just start that journal page, get rid of the white, have something to work from, get some of my own marks on there. There's self-love. Just getting some of that energy. It also helps move energy out of our bodies and onto the page when we work this way of just playing with pens and marks and words. Nobody needs to be able to see these words underneath. People are often worried in their art journal pages about showing their words, and you can just paint over them. Nobody needs to see them but you, or you can figure out ways to write them backwards or upside down or sidewards or really small. So some of these are kind of cute and might go in the top layer. Oh, look, there's a little heart. So maybe we're just gonna, oh, I love that little sun as well. So this was from an old class that Willa Wonders, Wendy Solganic taught a few years ago. Look at that cute little mushroom called Wonky Bits. which was super fun to draw all these little things and then spend some time fussy cutting them. Okay, that's enough of those. Oh, there's some more little hearts. How about those? So I'm going to get a little collage going on the page, just get a little texture. Notice there's no color here yet, and I am cool with there being no color. Let's see, I've got some book pages here. Again, I'm just adding collage to the page for the same reason as the writing. It just sort of breaks up that space, gives me something to respond to, kind of just creates some texture, helps build up those layers. When you see really beautiful layered art journal pages and you think, how did they do that? Layer by layer, being patient to let the colors dry. Let's hope we have enough matte medium in here. Okay, get those out of the way. Oh, squeaky, squeaky, squeaky. Good morning, April. And where is my, let's see, scraper? So I'm actually just going to dip these in to the matte medium. Then I'll go back over them, these little small pieces. And I'll be picking matte medium off my fingers for the rest of the day, which always happens. So if you're not familiar with what matte medium is, if you're new to mixed media art journaling, it is basically acrylic paint without any pigment in it. And it is often used in mixed media as a glue and as a way to kind of seal your images in. So when you paint over images or even a layer of paint with a coat of matte medium, it creates this really nice surface that you can return to again and again and add more layers of paint. So it just seals those layers in. If I didn't put matte medium over all this paper and I started to try to add a bunch of wet media over the top, then my images might buckle, or they might, come on out of there, or they might fall apart or shred or fray. So you always want to put just a nice coat of that matte medium both underneath your collage bits as well as over the top. And I'm putting, and if it's a heavier piece of paper, like these tend to be a little bit heavier, the book pages or tissue, not so much. It can be really helpful to put that matte medium both on the back of an image as well as on the page, so you get a really nice layer. A tip I learned from my beautiful friend Andrea Shebelou, and it's a way to make sure you get your images on there flat and so that they don't wrinkle. And depending on what you're collaging with, like magazine images and tissue paper, it's almost impossible, unless you're super patient, which I am not. I'll never be maybe a true perfectionist because I'm too impatient. But some thinner papers, this is going to help you to have fewer wrinkles in the pages. So it depends again on the quality of the paper that you're using for collage. I definitely love collaging with thinner materials. I don't want a ton of texture in this underneath layer. I like if I'm going to add things like burlap or some texture paste, which might be fun. I haven't played with texture paste in a long time. Then I definitely want to put those in an upper layer because they were not fun for me to paint over. I've tried and it always just ended up looking kind of icky and messy to me. And I realize I put almost all of those collage bits kind of going the same direction, not by intention, but I think just because they fit in the spaces. Let's see. And I want to get these really nice and glued down and nice and flat. So having some kind of a plastic paint scraper like this one, or an old gift card, credit card. Connor was, when he was cleaning up yesterday, we found my husband's old work ID, which is a hard plastic card, perfect for working this way. It's just a great way to get things really flat on the page. The other thing I love about working with matte media is that it dries pretty matte. If you use Mod Podge on the upper layers of your journal pages stick together. And sometimes if there's a lot of matte medium, they can stick together. Just stick a piece of like tissue paper or waxed paper from your kitchen or parchment paper between the pages to help with that. I had one journal I was working on the other day, and man, the pages were so sticky. But I don't have to let this dry, which I really like because it is acrylic and I'm just going to go in with more acrylic. You can get it nice and dry, but I'm just going to work on it a little bit wet, keep the process moving along here. And I'd love to hear in the chat this morning, where are my fellow perfectionists? Anybody else feel like they really struggle with perfectionism and that perfectionism holds them back from getting things going in the first place? Trying to find the double stick tape I used in my heart accordion book, but couldn't quite understand what the name of it was. Yes, do I still have it sitting here on the table? It's a funny name. Even a scrap of it would be good. Okay, I must have moved it over to the other table for another project because I'm not seeing it right here, Carol. But if you will shoot me an email, then I will. Oh, here it is right here. I knew it was still. It's called Sook Wang, Sookwang, is the brand of this one. It's made in Korea, and you can find it on Amazon. I'm sure other places as well if you're not a fan of Amazon. You're my people, April. I love it. Not a perfectionist, a good enoughist. I like that. I really had to face my perfectionism and overcome that when I had my first business, which was a parenting magazine. I had a parenting magazine based in the North Texas, Dallas, Texas area for, well, that's a happy, messy page, for about a decade. And no matter how, Sookwang, Sook, no H in there, Carol. No matter how many times we edited the pages, no matter, how great my editors were, and they were fabulous, there was always a typo that we missed, or, there would be a mistake in an ad or an article, and I would just be mortified, like the sending out that email by mistake, right? So just noticing when that inner perfectionist kicks into high gear, I need to pay attention to that. But having a publishing company where there's just no such thing as perfection, I think it's just impossible. And every time you read a print book, it's so rare to, or let me say, it's common to find books that have typos in them and mistakes in them. And I always have a lot of patience and grace. And I don't worry about it as much. If I send out a handout that, for a workshop that has a typo in it, I just laugh it off and say, I love a good editor. So I'm a big fan of getting things done is more important than getting them right. Getting things done is more important than getting them right. And I can tell when my inner perfectionist starts to get hung up and, raise its hand. One of the places where perfectionism really impacts me is working on, sorry, every time that heater comes on, I think it kicks up some dust. But every time I work on a commission painting for someone, I can get really caught in it has to be perfect. It's a very stress-inducing experience for me. I rarely do commissions for that reason, unless it's for, a close friend, because I do tend to get really hung up in perfectionism. Okay, well, this page is turning out to be super monochromatic. All those pinks have kind of blended together here, but this is, I think, a reasonable first layer. I'm going to get this dry, and then I want to come back in with some more of those reds. I'm just going to clean this off on this page so I can do something fun over on this page as well. I know, I keep thinking I give it up and it creeps back in. It's a great way to start it. Will I care about this on your deathbed? That is not weird, April. That's brilliant. I love that. Yeah, exactly, Bonnie. The pressure takes away from the fun. And I didn't start my painting practice to become a professional artist. I have deep admiration for the people who work to sell their art and they make a living for that. And I just, again, honor and celebrate them. And I know what a tender and emotional thing that could be. I love it when my paintings sell, but I want to make the paintings that I want to make because that's why I started painting. It's not my business, right? Painting is my personal practice that sustains and nourishes me. And I love sharing that with others, but I love teaching creative process for the work that I do in the world. And so just making peace within myself about I don't have to sell my paintings and I don't have to do commissions. I'm at choice. Also helped me to calm down that inner perfectionist. All right. Still, I'm going to bring in maybe a different red, and I want to get my fingers in this one because what better way to think about imperfection than to embrace my inner child. We did a lot of really deep inner child work this weekend in the Mythical Makeover experience, and I'm still sitting with a lot of what was shared and what came up for myself and others on that journey. But if I can just embrace play and approach art like my inner 6-year-old, then what feels like this chaotic, messy middle just becomes creative abandon. It becomes free play, and my heart feels nourished, and my inner perfectionist gets invited to just take a back seat. All right, I'm thinking, because where I want to go with this, where'd my image of my woman go, that I want to kind of do a mask here with her. Where am I going to put her on the page so that I will paint out what's around her and have the fun painting shine through? Or I could use her like a stencil and have her be a solid color and the painty background around her. I'm not sure which direction I want to go, so I'm going to set my journal aside for just a moment. And I'm going to grab... Usually I would do this with a manila file folder or a piece of used cardstock. And I have neither of those at hand, so I'm just going to use a piece of this smaller. This is a really nice heavyweight mixed media paper. And I know many of you have seen me do this before, but I'm going to create a mask and a stencil out of this magazine image. which I will be able to use over and over again. So I am going to cut her out first. No, I'm gonna glue her first. And for this, I can just use a glue stick. And I can kind of see her through there. So this is from that Costco magazine, I think also, and the paper inside that magazine is very, very thin. You can see it's wrinkling even just putting the glue stick on it, which means it would be challenging to collage this neatly into a journal page, which means it'll work even better for our purposes. I think this piece of paper is just big enough. So I'm okay if that wrinkles a little bit. This way I only have to cut once. But I really appreciated kind of the power pose here. I'm not going to worry too hard about like all the little bits and pieces. I may do a little fussy cutting around her hand up here to kind of get that shape of the fist. Make sure we get that nice and stuck on there. And I'm going to leave this piece of white on here just to make that torso a little bit longer. Just gives me maybe a few more options. And the reason that I glued it on to this nice stiff piece of paper is so that I can use it over and over again. And sometimes I will take my time and cut all the way around it so that I have a stencil and a mask. But this is a big flimsy stencil and I didn't want to do that, but I'll show you how you could still use this either way. Hi Yvonne, good morning. My early bird friend. We haven't seen Blanca in a while. I hope all is well with her. Does anybody else love making their own stencils and masks? Am I the only one who is geeky about this kind of stuff? I always feel like the more I can create my own original stencils, the more unique my art becomes. All right, take my time here. I'm going to get this little bit of this space cut in here to kind of show that space between her arm and her ponytail. And let's see, I think we even cleaned up all the X-Acto knives yesterday, so of course now I can't find anything, but I'm going to take this little tiny pair of scissors to get some of these little leftover bits. It's a fun thing to play with for sure, Carol, and it's great to do it with people especially, but you could do it with pretty much any shape or image or design. And then I definitely want to cut out this little piece, and if I had a cutting mat and an X-Acto knife, I would probably be a little more precise, but I'm just going to fudge it here with a little tiny pair of scissors. if you don't have a tiny little pair of scissors in your arsenal and you love collage and mixed media, highly, highly recommend getting some itty bitty scissors for doing fussy cutting work. And not everyone loves fussy cutting. I actually enjoy it and find it relaxing and calming. Okay, so here we have our awesome figure that I could trace around the outside of it with a pen or, my poscas and have it be a stencil. And I could also use it as a mask where she goes down and I paint everything out around her. Oh my gosh, that sounds so much fun, Carol. I love that. Love it, love it. All right. Love her so much. And I love these bigger pages. They definitely take a little more time. This still feels like it's wet. And I'm thinking I'm going to paint her out and maybe leave the background open so she kind of disappears into the background, because I'm also loving some of these little shapes on the page, still working very monochromatically here. So I'm going to start her with a dark red, and I may end up making her black. And then I also thinking that I can handwrite the affirmation in her body, or maybe really glue the words from the printable inside of the shape of her celebratory form here. And I kind of want her right smack in the middle of the page. So I'm going to go ahead. So is this still... All right, I'm going to hit this with my dryer really quick so that I don't damage my nice poscas. It's mostly dry, but I want it to be completely dry. I'm going to lift her up on the little bit, and I can always just draw the extension of her body, right, to so that we see her legs as well. So I'm just going to come up here, and this is where, because I'm going to use this as just a solid background, I'm not super concerned about the perfectionism of those lines, because it's all going to get painted in anyway. Silly poscas. I think that page is still just a little bit damp there, but this is what I had on the table in front of me. And I don't care if I get, paint on this, right? This is something that can be used over and over again. If I were using it as a mask, I would be painting over the top of the whole thing. So what I'm going for is the form, not the details. And I can clean them up later as well. Okay, so there we have the outline of the shape. Now I got to decide what color I want to make her. Let's see. Get that last little bit, like her thumb is folded over in there. Awesome. So we have our shape on the page. I know you can barely see it. Me too, Carol. What I love about this is I could also turn it over, have it going a completely different direction on the page. And now that I'm doing like that, I'm like, I really kind of like that, where she's kind of in the corner looking up at the page, and I wish I had tried that before. Do I want to change my mind? And because I turned it over, I can see that I definitely want her to be white against that red background. So I'm going to change my mind and redraw her. And I am going to see if I can just move that black around and let that other outline just become part of the marks in the background. And I'm going to do that using a baby wipe, which I love baby wipes in my studio. And that posca may be a little dry already. And this is where, guess what? I get to model being perfectly imperfect, changing my mind, starting over. It's been so dry here. I'm not surprised that posca is drying. Yeah, me too, Carol. It felt better for sure. So I'm going to worry about painting those other bits out later. I love this white and I love the positioning. I'll be able to see where else I need to put her, and I'm going to try this thicker posca on here so we can really get those lines nice and thick and see her. Even though I'm going to paint her white, I probably would have outlined her in black anyway. What I love about art journaling is it is such a perfect place to practice playfulness and imperfection in our art. We don't know what we like, what our creative voice is, or our style until we try. If we spend all our time right out the gate making mixed media art that we want to love, we're never going to love it. It's really, really key to being willing to practice, to let go. And I even kind of love that echo of women in the background. And one of the things Connor and I worked on, and then we can have this, sun. She's sort of reaching up to the sun here, and we've got some little flowers down here, which I can draw on. Okay, so it feels like now the page is coming together a little more nicely. But Connor and I were working on our prompts for March. I'm going to have a brand new printable. I was looking for some gesso. I think my gesso is over on the other shelf. So we're going to come in here with just some white paint and might have to do a couple of layers to get the opacity that I want, but we'll see. And March holds International Women's Day. And I wanted to do something to really honor and celebrate women in March. And it's hard to believe we're almost halfway through February already. And so our printable in March is going to be a list of 31 famous women from throughout history, women in the arts, specifically writers, poets, musicians, photographers. I've already started working on the list with just a little bit of information about them. And then the work that I want to do here live on the YouTube channel with that. And I'm live, I don't know, about 8 times with working with the prompts is I want to do portraits. So painting faces. I've done a month of like little small faces before, but I want to explore doing mixed media portraits, honoring and celebrating these famous women from throughout history. It feels exciting, honoring, and a bit challenging. So that's what our upcoming focus is going to be. And we can all get better at portraits together, or maybe you're already frickin' amazing and awesome at painting people. And I'm probably going to start with Maya Angelou, one of my personal literary heroines and just all around amazing and inspiring women. And all the women will be like from the last 100 years. So I kind of put a time boundary on it because, we get to see a lot of famous women from historical times, but what about the ones that are actively writing, working, making art today? All right, she's starting to come together. Yes, Dorothea Lange is a great example. All right, I got to get a little more matte medium under this piece because this is going to bug me. So don't be afraid to just lift up your collage bits and tuck a little more matte medium under there. And I still have a bunch of white on my brush here. So I'm just going to come in. I love this little flat brush, makes interesting marks. And I'm just going to make some marks on the page, and I definitely want to push that, the lines of this character back just a little bit more. I like actually this reflection is really cool here. If you can see, she's sort of looking at her own face here very subtly in the background. Let's see if I zoom in a little bit. There you go. Now you can really see, right, where it looks like there's a reflection of herself, which feels unintentionally inspiring and powerful on the page. My husband's making bacon upstairs and it smells so good. And so I'm wondering, so we did this one, right, as a stencil, but what if we came around and just put a little halo around this face here and had her pop out? It does. Good morning, Anne. Bacon smells amazing. Whether you like to eat it or not, it seems to always smell so good. All right. I'm kind of liking this shadowy figure behind these two sort of opposite figures mirroring each other as if she is looking in the mirror here at herself and saying, I release perfection and embrace imperfection. So acrylic brushes, when you're working with acrylic, they can hold a lot of paint. So as you all probably know, I didn't know this until I started painting with acrylics, that acrylics are not good for our water systems. And so I always get as much paint off of my brushes as I can before I stick them in water, and in order to put, have as little waste as possible. And so I think I'm going to make this even just that little bit more, bringing out both of these characters. This is what I call, as Bob Ross would say, a really happy accident. It's also the way that I make art, very intuitively letting those images arise. It's so interesting working on a camera like this because not only am I looking at my art on the page, but I'm looking at it in the camera and I get different perspectives when I do that. Maybe this is sort of that stepping in and embracing of her own strength and beauty. And I don't normally work with a monochromatic palette in this way, so it feels like a bit of a challenge. I can feel myself going, it needs some pops of yellow or some pops of this or some pops of that. And it doesn't, but I can feel myself thinking that, wow, it's very, very monochromatic. All right, I'm going to get some more of this, put this over here, neon pink going in here. Push back that white a little bit. Notice how you can't see any of my writing. You cannot see much of the collage anymore. You can just see some little bits and pieces of all of that. So what I love about the matte medium is that if I wanted to, because I have sealed all those images in, that I can, two people dancing, yes. Yeah, yeah, definitely loving that sort of mirror image. But if I wanted to, like the heart collage there is coming right off of her hand. And so because I used matte medium without damaging that paper underneath because it's sealed in, I could push some of this paint back and pop that collage out a little bit, so where it's just sort of peeking out a little bit more. You can't quite see that on the screen. We have this nice branch here. I could also just redraw those a little bit, but I kind of like this smoother surface over there. I just wanted to give you an example of what I could do. Still feeling a little bit messy, but it's coming together. This may be one of those pages that I need to walk away from, but I'm also feeling like I want to do some stenciling on the background, that it needs some pops of black. I think adding some of these images will help as well to kind of bring that surface together. Yes, it's like her spirit cheering herself on. That's a great way to put it. And maybe I just need a few more of these bits and pieces, but it feels like it's not quite there yet. It needs a little more going on. I'm going to get just a little dab of matte medium, really push it up under that image to get it into those nooks and crannies so I don't have that edge of that collage paper. And I love it. I can just see this mushroom in her back. It's what I love about these layers, is that, all this texture has been created because of the way that we layered the pages. And let's come in with just a little bit. I love this alizarin crimson by Liquitex. It's not only a gorgeous color, you can see over here, it's very translucent as well. So it's great for creating some of those layers in your work. And even though it's called crimson, it's pretty pink. Pretty pink. And I think what I'm wanting is just to smooth some of this out and really make sure that my two figures are highlighted, and yet I want that one in the back to continue to be subtle. And by putting a translucent layer, it's not transparent, it's not completely see-through, it's translucent. By putting a layer of this more, it does, even on the paint, it says it has a higher transparency, but by putting the transparent layer over, it smooths out your background layers, makes them feel more cohesive, helps to pull that whole piece together without using all these yummy bits and pieces and layers that are underneath the piece. All right, now it feels dark, but I love this pinky corner down here. So let's see if we can just It's so interesting. This pink, like it was a little separated at the bottom of the tube. I love paying attention to things like that because I want to know what my paints do. I want to know how they react to each other. Neons are also tend to be a have a high transparency. They're great for upper layers. And a fun tip that I learned from one of my dear art friends was that you can really brighten colors up a lot by mixing your neons with some of your other colors and you get some really beautiful, unique blends of your own by adding some pops of neon to other colors that you love working with. Okay, that feels better. It just needed to be brightened up and smoothed out, and yet make sure that we had these characters here dancing in the center. Oops, there was some black there. Okay, well, we got some contrast on the page unintentionally. All good. I will come back once that's completely dry and do something with that. But now that we have this little bit of black on here, maybe we're just going to add a little bit of texture to the page. And again, this is how, right, I create mixed media pages one layer at a time, paint things over, paint them out, let them go, bring them back. Okay, don't like that at all. That needs to go. All good. And let's get some water here. Oh my gosh, it's almost 8 o'clock already. So this is definitely one that is not going to be completed in one sitting. And I'm okay with that. I will show the finished page. I think once it sits for a couple of hours, I'm going to be happier with it anyway and know where to go next. And I will show the completed page on Thursday, or I'll make a little short and show myself putting the finishing touches on it. So again, I can just come in with that baby wipe. I don't need to lose all of that black. It's kind of creating some fun little bits of grunge around the edges there that I'm liking where it's lingering. And I love when you start to push the paint back, right? You get all kinds of interesting things that start to happen on the page. And if you're finding that you want to pull something up off of the page and the paint feels dry and the baby wipe isn't working, let me show you something fun I discovered by accident when I was trying to clean something up. This is just cheap hand sanitizer. And if you pour some hand sanitizer on the page and then just take a paper towel, or I'm going to use a baby wipe because that's what I have here in front of me, it dissolves the paint. It's also great for cleaning paint off of stencils and things, but it dissolves the acrylic paint. And again, I discovered this quite by accident. So if you're really wanting to remove some of those upper layers of paint, so unlike the baby wipe, this allowed me to go all the way back to those under layers and really pull some of that collage bits back. And maybe it's kind of nice to have a little bit of those lighter bits up at the top. I also really like this flower down here, so maybe I want to pull this flower back. And if it's been sitting there for a while, this will still work. And sometimes you may need to let that hand sanitizer sit for a minute to get it to work, but I've used this on canvases before when I've been trying to move paint around, but it will help you come in and push back some of those layers. So it's getting grungier, and I'm like, okay, I'm happy with the grungier. So I'm just noticing what's appealing to me today. So putting layers on, taking layers off. To me, this is such a hands-on representation of releasing perfection and embracing imperfection is just to keep playing, right? Just to keep playing. And that's a little glary because it's wet on there. All right, so I'm going to go let this page get super, super dry. I'm going to sit with it a little bit and decide where I need to go next with it. Definitely going to bring in some of these bits and maybe a little more drawing here on the bottom, and that I can feel that affirmation is just going to sit right here on that bottom edge of the page, and I will just cut it out from the prompts and glue it on because I love this font. And again, it's I release the need for perfection and embrace my perfectly imperfect self. All right, everyone, as always, thank you so much for joining me live. Thanks for catching the replay. Love being here with all of you, and I hope that today you have a perfectly imperfect day and that you treat yourself with loving kindness and compassion. Have a beautiful rest of your day. I will see you guys all bright and early on Thursday morning. Bye-bye, everybody. You are so welcome, Miss Bonnie.